6 months after I walked out of my sister's wedding mid-toast 8, my ex-fiancée called me from a hospital parking lot in Calgary, 8 months pregnant, asking if I'd come. I need to back up because none of that makes sense without the wedding. My name doesn't matter right now. What matters is that 2 years ago I was supposed to marry a woman named Genevieve, and the week before our own wedding, I came home early from a site inspection. I work, construction, management, fly-in fly-out jobs across Alberta, gone 2 weeks at a time, and found my older brother's jacket hanging on our bedroom door. Not in the hallway. On the bedroom door, like he lived there. I didn't say anything that night. I just stood in the kitchen until I heard them laughing through the wall, and then I left and drove to a Tim Hortons parking lot, and sat there until the sun came up. Here's the part people don't believe. I didn't confront her right away. I needed to know how long, so I waited 2 days, pretending nothing happened, and I found out everything, the texts, the dates, all of it time-stamped back almost 8 months. 8 months of my brother there. Desmond, no, that's not his name, doesn't matter. 8 months of my own blood sleeping with the woman I was about to marry, while I was up at camp earning the money for the wedding she was planning with him on the side. When I finally said something, Genevieve didn't even deny it properly. She said it wasn't supposed to turn into anything. Like it was weather. Like it just happened to her. I called off the wedding 3 days before it was booked. Lost the deposit on the hall in Banff. Lost the deposit on the photographer. Lost about 11 grand in non-refundable everything. Didn't care. What I cared about was that my parents already knew, and they hadn't told me. That's the part that actually broke something in me. Not Genevieve. Her I could write off as a person who made a choice. My family was supposed to be the one thing that didn't choose against me. My mother's reasoning, when I finally asked her directly, was that she didn't want to make things worse before the wedding. My father's reasoning was that family doesn't air things out in public, that I should have come to him quietly, and we'd have handled it. My sister's reasoning, she's the one getting married in this story, so keep her in mind, was that she didn't think it was her business. So I went to the wedding anyway, my brother's, not his wedding, my sister's wedding. I went to my sister's wedding 8 months after all this happened, because I told myself I wasn't going to let one rotten branch take down the whole tree. I sat in the second row. My brother was at the head table because he was the best man. Because apparently none of that had changed anything for anyone but me. Halfway through the toasts, my father stood up and thanked the whole family for getting through a hard year together. And looked right at me when he said it. Like I was the hard year. Like I was the weather event the family had survived. Instead of the thing that had happened to me, I stood up in the middle of his toast. Didn't yell. I said loud enough for the table to hear, "I'll see you all never," and I walked out before the cake was even cut. My mother texted me 40 minutes later, "You embarrassed your sister on her day. Not are you okay? Not we're sorry." I embarrassed her. That was the night I blocked every number in my family. Parents, siblings, cousins. The family group chat I'd been muted in for years anyway. I kept exactly one contact unblocked. Genevieve, only because she still had a storage unit key of mine and I needed it back. I picked it up from her apartment building lobby. We didn't speak. That was the last I saw of her. For 6 months, nothing. I moved to a 1-bedroom in Sherwood Park. Kept working camp rotations, kept my head down. I started seeing a counselor through my work's benefits plan, which I'll admit I only did because a guy on my crew wouldn't stop bugging me about it. Turns out it helped. I stopped flinching every time my phone buzzed. Then on a Tuesday in November, it buzzed with a number I didn't recognize, area code Calgary. I almost let it go to voicemail. Something made me pick up. It was Genevieve. Her voice didn't even sound like hers. Thin wreck. She was at the Foothills Medical Center. She said she was 8 months pregnant and that the baby was mine. And she was scared. And she didn't know who else to call, because her own family lived out east. And she had nobody in the city. I sat there in my truck in a co-op parking lot, with the phone against my ear for what felt like a full minute before I said anything. "That's not possible," I told her. "We haven't been together in 2 years. She said the math worked. She said, there'd been one night, right before everything fell apart. Before I even knew about my brother. One last night. Together. That I genuinely did not remember happening because by then we were already barely speaking, and I'd had 3 beers after a long shift and very little memory of the specifics. She said she'd been too ashamed to tell me. Too ashamed that the timing meant the baby could have been conceived in the same window everything else was falling apart. And she'd spent the pregnancy convinced it was my brother's. Until a casual conversation with her doctor about dates made her realize the window didn't actually line up the way she'd assumed. I didn't believe her. I told her so. She didn't get angry, which somehow made it worse. She just said quietly, "I know. I wouldn't believe me either. I just need you to know, in case anything happens tonight. They're saying preeclampsia. They might have to deliver early." I hung up and sat there for 20 minutes, deciding whether I was going to be a person who let a woman go through a medical emergency alone, because of what she'd done to me 2 years ago. Or a person who showed up because there was a chance. Even a small one. That a kid who hadn't asked for any of this was about to come into the world, needing somebody. I drove to Calgary. 3.5 hours, white-knuckled the whole way, telling myself the entire drive that I was doing this for the baby. Not for her. She was in a hospital gown that didn't fit right, hooked up to monitors, blood pressure cuff, cycling every 15 minutes. And she looked smaller than I remembered, scared in a way I'd never seen her look before. Not even the night I caught her. A nurse was trying to get a straight answer about emergency contacts and family history. And Genevieve had nobody to give except my name. Which she said out loud to the nurse. Like she wasn't sure. Had to right too. I stood in that doorway for a long moment. Then I walked in and sat down in the chair by the bed. Not because I'd forgiven anything, but because nobody, including a kid who might be mine, deserved to do this completely alone. They delivered her by emergency C-section 9 hours later. A boy. 5 pounds 2 ounces. In the NICU for observation because of how early he came. I stood at the window of that unit at 4 in the morning looking at this tiny kid in an incubator. With tape on his cheek holding a feeding tube in place, and something in my chest just came apart. The DNA test came back 12 days later. Standard paternity test, done properly this time, through an actual lab. Not a guess based on a calendar. 99.9% probability of paternity. He was mine. I'm not going to pretend that simplified anything. It complicated everything. Genevieve and I are not back together. I want to be very clear about that. Because I know how these stories usually get told. Like the betrayal gets erased the second a baby shows up. It doesn't. I still don't fully trust her. And I told her that to her face in the hospital cafeteria. Over the worst coffee I've ever had. What I told her was that I'd be his father, fully. But that didn't mean I was going to be her partner again. She cried, and then she said okay, because she understood, and because she didn't really have room to ask for more than that. I named him myself, on the birth certificate, while she was still in recovery. A name with no connection to anyone else in either of our families. On purpose. A clean name, mine to give. My family found out through my sister, who heard it from a who'd heard it from someone at Genevieve's work. My mother called the unblocked number. Found it was still unblocked, because I'd never gotten around to blocking it again. Said she wanted to meet her grandson. I told her I'd think about it. I haven't called back yet. I might never. The thing about cutting people off is, you don't actually owe anyone a re-entry interview. Just because something good happened, on the other side of the cut. My brother hasn't reached out at all. Which tells me everything I already knew about him. I moved to a 2-bedroom near Genevieve's place, not because we're getting back together, but because a kid needs both parents close, even broken ones, even ones who can't look at each other, without history sitting in the room. We do custody week on, week off. It works better than I expected. Some weeks it doesn't work at all. And we sit in a Tim Hortons parking lot, like two people who used to plan a wedding together, figuring out logistics neither of us wanted to need. People keep asking me if I forgive my family. I tell them, forgiveness was never actually the question. The question was whether people who throw you away for the sake of comfort ever get to come back. Just because the math worked out fine for them in the end. I don't think they do. Not automatically. Not because I asked them to wait. What I know is this. I have a son who didn't choose any of it, who has my eyes and somebody's stubborn chin, and on the nights he's with me, I sit in his room long after he's asleep. And I think about how close I came to not answering a phone call from a Calgary number I didn't recognize. Whatever happens with the rest of them. My parents, my brother, the family I used to have. It doesn't matter the way it used to. I have everything I need in a crib down the hall. The rest of them are just people I used to know.